The uncomfortable truth. Nobody tells you this. The moment you stop being available, people don't get angry, they get unsettled. Because your availability was never just convenience, it was control. And most men don't realize this until it's too late. You answer fast, you show up every time, you explain yourself, you try to be understood. And yet, you feel ignored, overlooked, taken for granted. Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology existed. He knew something disturbing about human behavior. People don't value presence, they value absence. And the more available you are, the less psychological weight you carry. This video is not about playing games. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding why everything changes the moment you stop being accessible, and why most men are exhausted, unfocused, and invisible without knowing why. Jung's core idea: why availability destroys value. Carl Jung believed the human psyche works on tension. Where there is no tension, there is no growth, no curiosity, no respect. When something is always available, the unconscious stops registering it as valuable. This is not opinion. This is how the human mind evolved. Food that is always available, taken for granted. People who are always available, taken for granted. Your attention, your time, your emotional presence. When there is no risk of losing it, there is no incentive to value it. Most men think respect comes from effort. Jung knew better. Respect comes from containment. The modern male condition: why men feel empty. Look at your life honestly. You are reachable 24/7. Your phone owns your nervous system. Your attention is public property. You reply instantly. You react emotionally. You explain yourself to people who didn't ask. And then you wonder, why am I tired all the time? Why can't I focus? Why do I feel mentally weak? Jung called this ego diffusion. Your psychological energy is leaking in all directions. And a man with leaking energy cannot command respect, even from himself. The shadow truth men avoid. Here is the part nobody likes to hear. People didn't disrespect you randomly. They learned how to treat you based on your availability. You taught them. Every instant reply, every unnecessary explanation, every time you were there when it wasn't required. You trained the world to see you as accessible, not valuable. Jung warned that when a man refuses to withdraw, his shadow takes over in unhealthy ways: resentment, passive aggression, burnout, silent anger. That's why nice men explode later, not because they're weak, but because they never learned psychological distance. What really happens when you stop being available? This is where things get interesting. When you pull back calmly, people don't think, "Oh, he's busy." They think something changed, and the unconscious hates unexplained change. So the mind starts filling gaps. Did I do something wrong? Is he upset? Is he pulling away? Is he becoming stronger? You didn't say anything, and that's the power. Jung understood this deeply. Silence activates projection. People project meaning on your absence, and projection is where power lives. Why explaining yourself makes you weaker. Most men over-explain. They justify their absence. They soften their boundaries. They try to be fair. Jung would say this is the ego seeking approval, but approval is never power. The moment you explain yourself, you lower your psychological position, because now your absence needs permission. Strong men don't announce withdrawal. They withdraw, and the world adjusts. The availability trap in relationships. This is where men suffer the most. When you are always available emotionally, you become predictable, you lose polarity, attraction fades. Jung believed desire requires distance, not emotional cruelty, not manipulation, but space. If someone knows you will always be there, your presence stops carrying weight. When you stop being available, people listen more, conversations deepen, respect returns. Not because you demanded it, but because the psyche responds to scarcity. Work, status, and invisibility. At work, the same rule applies. The man who is always available gets more work, less respect, no authority. The man who is selectively available is consulted, respected, deferred to. Why? Because power is associated with limited access. Jung said authority emerges naturally when energy is contained. You don't need to dominate, you need to stop leaking. Burnout is not a work problem. This will hit hard. Burnout is not caused by effort. It is caused by constant psychological exposure, always reacting, always responding, always accessible. Your nervous system was never meant for this. Jung warned that when a man does not withdraw, the unconscious retaliates. That retaliation looks like fatigue, procrastination, numbness, lack of motivation. Your mind is forcing distance because you refuse to create it consciously. The power of withdrawal, Jung's forgotten teaching. Withdrawal is not weakness, it is integration. When you stop being available, your thoughts slow, your focus sharpens, your instincts return. This is why solitude builds strength, not isolation, solitude. Jung spent years withdrawing from society to understand the human psyche. He knew transformation requires separation. The moment everything shifts. Here is the real shift. When you stop being available to everyone, you become available to yourself. Your goals become clearer, your tolerance for nonsense drops, your standards rise naturally. You don't need to announce change. People feel it, and they respond accordingly. The uncomfortable realization. Some people will disappear. That's not loss, that's filtering. They were only there because access was easy. Jung believed every withdrawal reveals truth, and truth is painful but freeing. The internal authority that emerges. When you stop being available, you stop chasing validation, you stop explaining your worth, you stop negotiating your time. Authority emerges quietly, not through aggression, but through absence with intent. Final truth. This is the core. Carl Jung never taught men to dominate others. He taught them to contain themselves. And containment changes everything. Not because people fear you, but because they can no longer predict you. And unpredictability, when rooted in calm, is power. If this made you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is awareness waking up. This channel is not for everyone. It's for men who want to understand how the world actually works, not how it should work. If you want more deep psychology, more Jungian truth, and more mental clarity, subscribe. Comment what topic you want next. Because when you stop being available to everything, you finally become dangerous in the right way.